how should a candidate stand out? What should they do?
Yeah, so I would say five major ways for you to stand out in this modern job market. And that would be number one, learn to use AI.
Welcome to the Pinpoint Asia podcast. Today we have a very special guest indeed. It's my friend and former colleague Matthew Chung on the podcast, who was a top recruiter for us, and he started his own company, and now he's a career coach. We're going to ask him about why he chose to do that, leaving us, and we're also going to ask him about what is hot today and how a candidate can stand out in today's marketplace, which is very different from the time when we used to recruit back in 2007. With that said, first of all, let me welcome my colleague Matthew Chung to the podcast. Welcome, Matt.
Hey, Vince, thank you. Thank you for having me here. I was thinking, wow, what a privilege to finally make the Pinpoint Asia podcast. I feel like I've made it now. I can retire. I'll be happy.
The honor is all ours. Let me ask you, right? Recruiter
Yes.
turned career coach, right? So what sparked the move?
What sparked the move? Well, yeah, I guess probably the biggest reason is that at that time when I left, which is about 4 years ago, I really wanted to start a business. And I've been wanting to start a business for some time by then, but I guess I was too scared. But at that time, I felt, I don't want to look back um, many years from now and then think, oh, I should have started a business, but I was too scared to do that. I didn't want to do that. So I decided to take the plunge and take the risk. But I gotta say, honestly speaking, if I knew what I know now, which is just how difficult it is to start a business and to run it, I'm not sure if would have started it, because running a business is hard. But what I can say is that there's nothing like starting a business that forces you to learn and learn and grow a lot and so fast. I'm learning all the time. I'm constantly seeing where I'm lacking, where I need to improve, where I need to learn and grow. So I definitely enjoy that learning journey. But yeah, so that was one of the biggest reasons. And the second reason is that I realized at some point that I was already doing career coaching or job search coaching, even in my recruitment. So when I started recruitment, I realized pretty early on that if I can increase the rate of interviews, so number of interviews that my candidate gets by improving their resume, then it'll help me become successful, right? Because they have more interviews and more opportunities. And then so what I started doing was I started reviewing and revising and even rewriting my candidate's CV. And so I spent a lot of time doing that to try and make it more relevant to what the hiring manager is looking for. And as a recruiter, if you know what to change, it doesn't take very much time. So I would literally change my candidates' resumes for them, and I was revising and improving it. And then I also realized that if I can increase the rate of passing interviews for my job seekers, then it'll also help me, do my job and make more placements. So I started coaching my candidates with how to answer some common questions like tell me about yourself, why are you interested in us, or some difficult questions like what are your strengths and weaknesses. So as I was doing more of the coaching, and I started to see that my candidates, the people that I worked with, started passing more interviews, getting more interviews. And then I realized this is a real value add. I mean, finding a job is obviously a big problem, major problem to solve. And what I was doing, I was making some tangible difference. So I thought if I can make that into a product and help more people, even outside of recruitment, I thought it could be again a potential value add, which is why I started this business.
You got to tell us the name of your business as well.
Oh, yes. So my company is called Elevation Career Consulting. Elevation Career Consulting. And I'm usually active on LinkedIn and YouTube. So you can find me there.
Okay, my first question to you is this. When we were recruiting back in 2007, the market was different, and now it's different. My question to you is, what are the differences primarily?
So the differences between 2007, well, if I may go back a little bit further, so I think the scene of job search and hiring has changed drastically over the years. So the major difference, the first difference maker was the internet. So before the internet, people had to actually use physical copies of their resume, right? They had to print it out, they had to mail it in, and people had to find jobs on newspapers, magazines, and if they wanted to research the company, they actually had to go to the library, right, and find books on quarterly earnings and things like that to find the information, which meant it took much longer, but the quality of the application was much, much higher because you're not going to apply to jobs that do not match your background because it takes a lot of effort. So again, it took longer time, but the quality of the application was higher, and it made sense for employers to review pretty much all the applications that they received because again, chances are they were a good match. And then came the internet, which changed everything. You no longer have to print CVs. You don't have to find jobs on newspapers anymore. Everything's online. You can apply through email, company websites, and then came job boards. And in the beginning was great. And even 2007, it was great because now things are much faster. Employers can receive more CVs. You can apply to more jobs, which meant more interviews, more opportunities, hopefully more offers and more hiring, which was the sweet spot. But then, as you know, too much of good things usually is not good anymore. And so what happened is there was an explosion of job board. People realized just how easy it is. It became very easy to apply. And so, so many job boards, so many jobs posted everywhere to the point that at this now, you don't even know if there is a posting on a job board. You don't even know if that job is still active, still open, or even real. So we have come to this state. And also, on the other side, we started seeing things like one-click submission. So one-click submit on job boards, which meant all you have to do is to upload one copy of your resume. And regardless of whether you're a fit or not, you can literally apply to hundreds of jobs by just clicking one button with zero thought, zero tailoring, and hundreds of jobs, whether you're a good match or not. So what that means, now the employers do not have enough time to go through all the resumes because the volume is just too much. And even if they did have the time, it doesn't make sense for them to review all of them because the quality of so many CVs is it just the, it's not very good. And so now you have to do that much more to stand out because the competition's so much, the volume of application is so much. So you need some ways for you to stand out, and by making your resume and presenting yourself as relevant as possible, according to what the employer is looking for through job search coaching, networking, and various other methodologies. So I think in this day and age, job search coaching is that much more important because again, you need to stand out in this sea of just a lot of noise.
You touched upon this briefly, but in this day and age, how should a candidate stand out? What should they do?
Yeah, so I would say five major ways for you to stand out and to, I guess, make the most of it in this modern job market. And that would be number one, learn to use AI because there are so many tools that are available right now that can make your job search that much faster and more effective. And number two, improve your communication and presentation skills. It's not only going to help you in your job search, but in pretty much everything that you do. And number three, strategic resume and interview preparation. So whether we like it or not, the end result of the offer will depend on how well you perform during your job search stage, resume, networking, interview, and salary negotiation. And so you need to really prepare for that. We can talk about them more later. And number four, networking. And networking is how you stand out. One of the most effective ways to differentiate yourself from the noise. And number five, partnership with well-connected and trustworthy recruiters. Not any recruiters, but recruiters that can genuinely add value to what you're doing.
Let's go through each of these items one by one, right? So number one is
Sure.
AI, yeah? So how can job seekers leverage the power of AI in their job search?
Yes. And so right now, the AI is in its infancy, right? And but even then, and no one really knows how much it's going to change, what we do. But there are already so many tools that are available that can make your job search so much more effective and make it faster. Say, for example, even when you write resumes, before you had to write everything, all the words by yourself, right? And one of the best ways to capture the employer's attention is to make your resume as relevant to the job as possible by tailoring it, which before took a lot of time. But now with the uh, advance of AI, you can do that much faster. So you can just upload your CV and paste the job description and ask the AI to come up with the keywords and to change and update your CV so that it is as relevant as possible by containing all the keywords. You can do that in a matter of minutes. So that's just an example of how much AI can help you make your job search more effective and not just save time. I mean, saving time is one thing, but with the additional time, now you can become that much more intentional, that much more strategic. And so the quality of your resume, quality of your outreaches, cover letters and email, and even interview preparation will be higher as a result.
You mentioned AI technologies, right? Am
Yes.
I to assume that we're essentially talking about ChatGPT, or is there more to it?
Yes, I mean, yeah, primarily I'm just referring to ChatGPT or Claude or even DeepSeek. You don't need a lot of fancy tools at this point. Just by telling it to help you improve your resume, it will already do a pretty decent job, which can be your starting point. But of course, with prompt engineering, if you know a few tricks, such as telling the ChatGPT to act as a certain role, persona, like an experienced HR manager, and then providing some templates so that the output will be according to the format that you want, as well as providing some examples of what you want the AI to produce. Those tricks will make the end result much more usable and much more useful.
Right, let's move on to the second strategy now, right? So you mentioned
Yes.
communication and presentation skills. Can you tell us why it's more important now than ever before?
Right. So I wouldn't say that communication and presentation skills are necessarily more important now than before, but I would say that those skills are much more in lack in this day and age compared to before. And I believe it has largely to do with social media and all the apps, right? Online, everything, COVID changed everything. So more and more people do not have the ability to connect with a real human being, have a meaningful connection, build rapport, and effectively communicate. So as a result of that, if you have a little bit more communication skills and presentation skills, then you will be able to stand out that much more. Just because in the competition, relatively speaking, other people lack that same ability. So let me see. Yeah, so basically, even just little things, right? Like smiling, you know, um, making eye contact, your energy and enthusiasm, facial expression can really make a big difference, especially in the process of an interview and your job search.
People believe that communication skills are something that they're born with or something they're not born with, right? How can someone improve their communication skills?
Yeah, I mean, I believe it is true to a certain degree that some people are born with certain personality traits or certain strength that will be conducive to them communicating better. But I also believe, and I mean, it is proven that communication skills can be learned. So, just to give you an example of my own story. So, I still remember to this day when I was in middle school, I was part of a debate club, and I still remember to this day the first time I was debating. So, I really wanted to do a good job. I wanted to impress all the audience, and I was trying very hard. And I thought what I was going to say made sense, but none of them mattered because as soon as I started speaking, um, my left leg started to shake uncontrollably, and I couldn't control it. So it started just a little bit, and then as time passed, it became more and more violently to the point that I couldn't even stand straight anymore. Like my whole body was shaking. So again, like it was a terrible experience. And then, and then after that, I ended up joining software engineering. I started my career as a software engineer because I was much more comfortable working with a screen than working with other people. And so I remember distinctly thinking, I'll probably never be able to build relationship with people, one of those people that talk really well and, build relationship well. I'm never going to be like that. And then through a series of events, I started recruitment. I joined Pinpoint Asia, and I had to learn. I was forced to speak to people all the time, and not just speak to people, but speak in a way to change someone's mind, influence, negotiate. And so I had to learn. I was forced to learn to communicate effectively, and I grew a ton during that time. And then I started producing video content, so I had to start speaking in front of a camera, which was a whole nother ball game. But as I spoke more, as I recorded more, I was able to learn, and I've come to this point, which is very different from how I started, say 15, 16 years ago. I don't know if you remember, working with me back then, 16 years ago, Vince. But I mean, I was a mess. I was so scared to talk to anybody, but I'm a very different person now. And I believe, so are you. And so very much can be learned, can be improved. Just takes some, I guess, intentional effort.
How does one start? Say someone's looking for a job now, right?
Hmm.
By the time they go through courses or whatever they need to go through, right? It might take too long. But if someone has an interview, say 2 weeks from now, and they want to improve their communication skills, how can they go about doing it quickly?
Right. And that's a great question. And it makes a lot of sense. And I believe that one of the most, one of the first things when it comes to improving one's communication skills is the awareness of how you, awareness of how you look and how you sound when you talk. The problem and the difficulty of improving one's communication is that you never get to see how other people see you, right? Because you're never on the other side of your communication. So everything that you say and all the movements that you make, they're all in your head. And you may feel that it sounds great or whatever, but you never have any idea of how other people view you when you communicate. And so having that awareness is a first step. And what you want to do that quickly is just get your phone, right? And record yourself speak. So what you should do is it should be something that is unscripted, not something you memorize or rehearsed, but just pick a topic, anything that you can talk about for 5 minutes. It can be about your hobby, your work. It doesn't matter as long as you improvise. And you speak for about 5 minutes and you record yourself on your camera and make eye contact with the camera lens. Then watch it back to see what you sound like what kind of habits you have. Do you have a lot of filler words such as and do you have any unnatural, maybe facial expressions or body language that may be distracting? So just being aware of what you look like and sound like will, and being aware of that and knowing what areas to improve, the half the battle is already won. And after that, you can decide to work on different areas such as intonation, right? Rate of speech and things like that to improve. And the good news is that even when it comes to job search and you have an interview maybe next week or something like that, you don't have to be perfect in your communication. You don't have to be a great communicator to do well in the interview. And the reason is because most people don't do this. Most people do not pay any attention to improving their communication. They're not even aware of what they sound like, how they come across. So just by putting in just a little bit of effort and a little bit of practice into improving your communication will go very far and will give you a lot of return for your investment, even immediately.
Would this be applicable to people who don't speak English as their first language as well?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So I actually believe that people who are not native speakers, so who have language barriers, working on your communication will give you that much more return, right? Because it is not your natural language. And so, even more so, there may be some habits or pronunciation or different maybe body language when you're nervous, even more so when you are able to see what you do and some of the mistakes that you make and you improve them intentionally, um, especially when you speak your second language, will be even more effective.
Right. So let's go to the third item on the list
Yes.
of tips, right? Which is strategic resume and interview preparation. So can you tell us more about this? What kind of strategy should one employ?
Yes, absolutely. So, I mean, let me ask you a question, right? Let's assume that you are in a university and you're about to take your year-end annual exam, okay? And the result of your exam will determine whether you will graduate or not. Now, the annual exam, year-end exam, is supposed to test you on what you have learned throughout the year, right? Throughout the year and not what you have crammed 3 days before. So, let's say, would any student in their right mind will therefore think that, oh, it's supposed to assess what I've learned throughout the year. I attended all the classes. So I'm just going to go and see what I remember and just wing it so that they can truly assess what I've learned throughout the year without any special preparation or study. Nobody's going to do that, right? Because obviously everybody will take the time, even though they have learned different things throughout the year, or supposedly they will study maybe a week before, 2 weeks before, or at least a few days to make sure that they perform at their peak. And I believe that job search is just like that. Job search is just like an exam that assesses what you have done throughout your career. In fact, it is even more important than an year-end exam. The problem is that for some reason, when it comes to job search, many people believe that they should just be themselves, right? And just show up and wing it and just say whatever comes to their mind. Or or they believe that they shouldn't prepare because they don't know how to. So even if they wanted to, they feel like they don't know how to. But it's the opposite. I mean, job search is where you need to really communicate and shine and convince the employer what you have done on all the value that you can add and your expertise and strength and what you do during that time, right? It's not what you know, but it's what you communicate and how you can convince the employer and how much assurance you can provide to the employer. And so, I mean, this this really requires you to prepare accordingly, right? How to write your resume as relevantly as possible and capture the attention, and even during the interviews, your responses, giving the employer what they want to hear and knowing what to say, what not to say, right? What will give them assurance versus concern. And so every time you write a resume and submit a resume without preparation, right? Every time you attend an interview unprepared, basically is a missed opportunity that you could have done so much better. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. So on that note, though, right, how
Yes.
should one tweak their resume to suit a particular role? And can AI help with this?
Yes. And so um, the thing about resume is that if you know what you're supposed to do, if you know what you're supposed to focus on, resume writing is very easy. And it can be done in a very short period of time. And so the key is knowing what matters the most, because not everything in the resume is equally important. And I believe it really boils down to attention. Because, in this day and age, right, large volume of application, people are always busy. The average time it takes for the initial glance of a resume is really very short. And according to most research and data, they say it's about 7 seconds. So initial glancing of a resume, checking out your name, maybe the professional summary, work experience, and etc. Initial glance takes about 7 seconds. So unless you can capture the attention of the reader during that 7 seconds, nobody's going to read your resume, right? So therefore, capturing attention is the number one thing. And how you do that is by focusing on the first page. So again, according to research, what people have found is that 98% of hiring managers will, when they open the CV, will view the first page. Okay. And then when it comes to the second page, the number drops to 40%. Only 40% of hiring managers will actually look at the second page, not read the whole thing, but just look at the second page. And when you go to the third page or after anything after the second page, the number dropped to 7%. So nobody really cares about second page. If if you want to stand out, all your focus has to be all the most relevant information, things that will sell your experience to the employer and make it stand out, has to be on the first page. And so that's what you need to focus on. The second page, they're not as important because most people, the majority of people will not even read it. And the second part is how AI can help. So as I mentioned briefly before, the way you stand out is by making your CV as relevant as possible and to the specific job and specific employer. And so what you want to do is whenever you apply for a job, you need to look at the job description and you need to identify the keywords. Not everything is a keyword, okay? There are certain things that are just phrases that are repeated in pretty much every JD, but there are certain keywords, certain requirements, certain projects, certain tasks that are the key requirements in the job description. What you want to do is to identify what they are and incorporate them into your CV as much as possible. And the reason for that is because who usually writes job descriptions? It's the hiring managers. Usually it's the hiring manager that write the job description. And so the more keywords you incorporate from the JD to your CV, you're basically speaking the hiring manager's language, right? And so that's how you stand out. The problem before was that it takes time. It takes a lot of effort, right? If you are not used to writing resumes all the time, not like recruiters or, recruiters write CVs all the time. It's easy for us, but for most people, it's difficult. So it used to take a lot of time. Now, all you have to do is upload your CV, upload your resume, JD, to the AI and ask it to come up with a list of keywords and ask it to incorporate it into your CV. And literally it can be done in 3 minutes, 5 minutes. And then of course, you have to read, right, what the AI generate. Every time, 100%, you have to review and revise it to make sure that it is accurate. And then you submit. So now you can tailor your CV in literally 10 minutes, 15 minutes before each application. And I mean, you can imagine, right? Like how much time you'll save and how much more impactful your application will be.
You say, assuming I'm a candidate and I've written a good CV, and then now
Yes,
the company wants to interview me, right?
yes,
How can I make sure that I do a good job at the interview?
right, right. And so one of the reasons why many people feel that it is difficult to prepare for interviews is because, they don't know what questions will be asked. So they feel, what, do I have to prepare for like 100 different questions? I mean, that just doesn't make any sense. The good news is that if you just prepare for a small subset of common questions, you will be able to cover the majority, like 80+% of the questions that will be asked in any given interview. So this is a case. Interview preparation is a situation where the 80-20 rule can apply very aptly. So what's the 80-20 rule? 80-20 rule is like a rule observation, right? Of how to explain what happens in the world. It was discovered by this Italian economist by the name of Pareto. And what he discovered is that 80% of the nation's wealth was shared by 20% of the population. And then later people realized that this can be applied to much more general, broader situations, such as, for example, 80% of revenues usually is generated by 20% of clients. 80% of biggest issues come from 20% of bugs. So these are and many more situations. So in the same way, 80% of questions that will be asked will be you can cover them just by working on a small subset of questions, common questions, and you will be able to do very well. So when I say common questions, I'm referring to things like, tell me about yourself. Why are you interested in us? What are your strengths and weaknesses? Why should we hire you? And etc. So that's something that you need to prepare beforehand so that you do not have to come up with the responses on the spot, right? Interview is already a highly pressure environment. If you choose to answer these questions on the spot, it'll be very hard for you, and it'll be virtually impossible for you to optimize these responses so that they're as relevant as possible to what the hiring manager is looking for. And number two, the other type of questions that you need to prepare for are behavioral slash situational questions, such as, tell us about a time when you had to overcome a challenge. What would you do if you had a colleague, if you had a conflict with your colleague? So these are behavioral slash situational questions. And the key to answering these open-ended questions well is to have a structure and prepare your stories. Stories of all your relevant experiences, achievements, and results that you produced, and you need to, I guess, prepare them in such a way that uh, you can communicate the main points succinctly and not talk too long, and also in an engaging way. And you want to create the stories as many as possible that are relevant to the job. Now, it may sound very difficult, and it is difficult to do so, again, if you had to improvise on the spot. But if you prepare beforehand, it's very much doable. And the kind of impact that you will make by telling an engaging story of how you overcame challenges instead of just, having to try to think of something and being all over the place will be, extremely significant.
Right. Our next topic, right, is the fourth
Yes.
on the agenda, right? It's networking. So, can you tell us why is networking important, and how can one land themselves their dream job through networking?
Yeah. So one thing, so because of the characteristics of the modern job market, where again, we have overabundance of applications and CVs, employers are paying attention to job board applications and website applications less and less. So a lot of the applications, even good ones, even ones that are highly qualified, may be missed by employers because they're spending less and less time. And so networking is how you can stand out above the noise. And an interesting statistics is that when you look at how companies make hiring decisions, so if you look at the percentage of people that a company hired through internal referrals, it can be somebody that the hiring manager knows already or somebody within the company, we've introduced that person. Compared to all the other methods, such as job board, website, recruiters, and anything else, the percentage of people that companies hire through internal referral is more than all the other methods combined. And one of the main, again, it is because of the overabundance of applications through job board and et cetera. But another reason is because when somebody is referred internally by somebody that the hiring manager may know or somebody in the same organization, you are no longer viewed as a complete stranger, which is what happened in most interviews. And even if the person referred you do not know you very well, as long as you're referred, the hiring manager or you'll be considered as somebody who is vetted or vouched for. So it'll provide more assurance to the hiring managers. And one of the biggest fears of a hiring manager is hiring somebody, bringing somebody on board who looked great on paper and even during interviews, but hiring like weirdos, somebody who can't work with other people, have major problems, social problems, or whatever. And you only find out after you bring them on board, which is very, very costly. So that's a major concern for many hiring managers. But now, if you're referred, you're no longer considered as a stranger, somebody again, vouched for. And so they're much more willing and they prefer to hire somebody like that. So according to, again, some hiring data and research, somebody who is referred is 4 times more likely to pass the interview compared to someone who is not. And so, I mean, the potential is huge, and it can make a real difference.
How does one know how to network? For example, there are so many events out there. There are meetup events, there are all these industry events. Every event you go to, it takes time, an investment of money for some of them, you know. How does one go about networking the right way?
Yes, and I mean, there's networking for long-term purposes, and there's networking for job search, which is much more short-term, right? And so when you're networking for short-term, I suggest stick to mainly LinkedIn. I mean, well, LinkedIn as well as using your personal networks. So if when you start job search, you should reach out to everybody that you know, like all your friends, ex-colleagues, your family members, relatives, or whoever, to ask for context in your target companies. You should definitely do that. And that's probably the best and the most effective way if they know somebody. But another way is to leverage LinkedIn. And so the key is consistency here, and perseverance. Because by the nature of network, when you reach out to people that you do not know, not everybody's going to respond, right? So the response rate may not be very high. So if you just try to network once in a while, you're not going to see much result. And that's probably the reason why so many people say, I've tried networking, I tried reaching out to a couple of people, but it never works. And the reason is because you don't have a consistent strategy. So what I suggest is to reach out to your target contacts, and the key is target contact here, 1 to 2 target contacts every single day. Okay, so just find and identify the right person and contact them 1 or 2 people every day. And then you need to send a unique message. And in terms of the target contacts, they're either potential hiring managers in the companies that you want to join. So they're either hiring managers for a job that you know, or potential hiring managers even without open jobs at a target company that you know, as well as people that are working in your target company or target industry, and you need to reach out to them on a consistent basis. And the key is always send a unique message. In this day and age, if you send a generic message that you can copy and paste to everybody, nobody's going to pay attention. I mean, we already are flooded with mass mails, and nobody's going to pay attention to that. If you want to be noticed, you always have to write a unique message specifically for them. It doesn't have to be grand, but again, unique, applicable only to them. The more you can do that, the more likely you'll hear back and be very pleasant. As for just a short phone call or Zoom, and be very pleasant, make sure you have the right impression, first impression.
Share with us some examples of how networking has helped one of your clients or your candidates.
Yes. So I can talk about someone that I worked with last year. So she was in the healthcare industry. And at that time, the market in the healthcare industry was really bad. So there was a lot of funding reduction going on at that time. Many of the larger organizations were cutting costs. And so there was really very few jobs that were available online. Even if she wanted to apply to online job board, she just couldn't because there weren't many jobs available. So she decided to really commit to the networking process. So she reached out to people, 1 or 2 people every single day. I mean, sometimes she missed it, but again, overall, she was very consistent. And I mean, she ended up meeting a lot of people, and not just a lot of people, but some key decision makers in the industry, right? Heads of departments, people who manage hundreds, if not more, people, program heads of very large organizations that she wanted to join, and even owners of startups. And she ended up having she ended up having many, many interviews and meetings for opportunities that she didn't even know existed and should have never been able to find out unless she networked. So in the end, she ended up joining a company, again, through her network, but it wasn't LinkedIn. She ended up meeting somebody in a clothing store. I know it sounds funny, but by then she was in a hyper networking mode. And everywhere she turned, she was ready to network. And she ended up meeting people. So that person knew the hiring manager of the organization she ended up joining, and they were connected. She passed all the interviews, I mean, with flying colors, because by then she was already ready to interview well through all the interview preparation that we worked on together. And she found they absolutely loved her, right? And she was able to find work-life balance. All her skill set, they're highly valued and appreciated by the company. So, that's what happened. And there are many more examples like this as well that really made a difference. I mean, people receiving 30, 40% increment, amazing benefits, all through networking.
Next is my favorite tip of today's podcast, which is working with recruiters. So,
Yes, sir.
how
Yes,
can
sir.
modern job seekers leverage partnerships with the recruiters to stand out and gain some sort of a competitive edge?
Yes. So let me begin by explaining what a great recruiter can potentially, the value that they can potentially provide. So people that are well connected in the market, they would have insider's knowledge based on their information with the hiring manager or people in certain organizations. So kind of information, or maybe what the hiring manager is looking for, right? Based on the conversation, kind of information that you will never be able to find anywhere else. You cannot Google them, so they will have this insider's information. And many of these guys are friends with the hiring managers. And many of these recruiters have placed the hiring managers when they were junior, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. They will have deep industry knowledge, industry trends, salary trends, and obviously they'll be able to negotiate for you as well. So when you think about it, the advantage can be, I mean, absolutely substantial. And again, some of these guys are on WhatsApp basis with the hiring managers' bosses, right? Department heads and et cetera, C-level executives. So they can follow up anytime. And, whoever they work with, they're able to really sell, their strength, why they should hire these people, and it can influence the hiring decision. So that's the kind of value that these guys can, provide. And I mean, as a matter of fact, when I was a recruiter, that's one of the reasons how I was able to add value because I knew these hiring managers and CIOs and MDs personally, and some of these guys I placed before. So what would happen is, and I'm on WhatsApp basis with them all the time, and one of the biggest advantages was that I had access to roles that were not public information. So what these senior guys do is they have roles and openings, they have an idea, but they're not approved yet. So, so there are these roles that even the HR, do not know about. But what they will do is they will come to me and say, "Hey, Matt, I want to hire these guys. I want to hire these, EDs. I want to hire these managers and etc. I am going to get it approved. The headcount's going to come, but can you start looking out for the right people for me?" So what I would do is I would go to the candidates that I work with and job seekers that I have relationship with, and I would introduce opportunities that nobody knows about. Even the HR do not know about, right? And they would have first dip, they would have early access to these um, potentially really interesting opportunities. And so again, working with the right recruiters can make all the difference.
How does a candidate go about identifying these recruiters?
Right. Um, and so I believe the first thing you need to look at is how well connected they are, because it really is probably the biggest value add. So you ask, so when a recruiter reaches out to you about a particular opportunity, ask them if they know the hiring manager, if how many people they place in the organization, who else they know, are they on a what's the basis or whatever with key decision makers. That's the first thing you can look at. And the second thing is how knowledgeable they are in the industry. So they may not have relationship with some particular individuals, but if they are very knowledgeable in the industry, that means they have worked in the industry for a long time. Chances are, they know what they're doing, and so they will be able to identify and recommend the right opportunities because they'll be able to understand, what the industry offers as well as what you're looking for in terms of your career aspiration. So the industry knowledge is a big deal. And but even if some recruiters are not as connected, so if they do not have a lot of years of experience, they may not be as well connected. And even if they do not know the industry as well as you hoped, if they are proactive and if they are willing to really help and add value, then it can also be very useful. So, for example, every recruiter knows somebody, right? In the client, in the employer. It can be the HR, hiring manager, but whoever it is, they know somebody. So they're able to follow up for you, they're able to get the feedback for you. And even based on some of the previous interviews that they scheduled for other people, they may be able to provide some insider information as to the kind of questions that are asked and things like that. So as long as they're proactive, they can be useful. What you do not want are just passive paper pushers. All they do is get your CV, submit, and they disappear, right? And you can't reach out to them. They never give you feedback. If you don't make the interview, they don't update you. I mean, those are the people that probably will add the least amount of value to you. So, right, how well connected somebody is, how much industry knowledge, and how proactive they are. And just one thing, I just want to say that also stay away from people that are overly aggressive and overly pushy. Because one thing you have to realize as a job seeker is that the recruitment industry at the end of the day is a sales industry. Every recruiter has a sales quota, number of people they need to submit or place, and things like that. And so sometimes you will come across people that do not care about your career, do not care about what you want. All they want is use you to make as many applications and just meet the numbers. And and so you don't want to do that. And so how you find that, how you can identify those people and avoid them is pay attention to how well they listen to you, right? Do they really listen to what you're looking for, the career aspirations that you want? And whether they pay attention to you or not. And when they introduce opportunities that may not be aligned with what you're looking for, and you tell them that, do they give you a lot of pressure, right? Do they try to force you? So and how pushy they are. So you want to look for that kind of um, um, habits. Now, I mean, if they're being persuasive, if they're trying to explain why these opportunities match your career aspiration, that's fine. That's not what I'm talking about. But I'm talking about people that call you like every 30 minutes, every hour, trying to make you feel bad, make you feel guilty or whatever. I suggest stay away from that. And one thing that I used to always say as a recruiter is that for a recruiter, it's a deal. For the candidate, it is their career. So you want to find people with that kind of mindset, to really help people and add value. And there are recruiters like that. There are recruiters really that are in it for a long run, and they want to really build the right reputation and help people and find satisfaction that way. And so you want to find those people.
Could you give us some examples of some good recruitment firms, Matt?
Some good recruitment firms, yes. So this is what I would say. Um, I mean, it's hard to say that there are good recruitment firms where all the recruiters are great and bad recruitment firms where everybody's bad. It's not like that, right? So in every recruitment firm, there are recruiters that are more helpful, more knowledgeable, and there are always going to be people that are, not as helpful. But one thing that you can look out for is the company's culture. So for example, there are certain recruitment firms that put a lot of pressure on their recruiters, right? And micromanage them, keep their numbers all the time, and yell at them if they don't meet numbers. So if you are in that kind of environment, then naturally, because of the pressure and because of their fear of losing their job and things like that, they might be more tempted to just not care about people and just submit them, just meet their numbers, right? And it's hard to imagine that if the company is treating their internal recruiters in such a negative way that they will be able to treat other people, the people that they work with, in a positive way. And so I think that looking out for the culture is very important. And one company that I know personally that has a great culture is Pinpoint Asia. I mean, it may sound like self-serving, but I mean, this is a company that I know that I was part of for over 15 years. And Vince, you were able to really create a culture that is conducive to helping people well, right? You treat your recruiters really well. I mean, obviously, you require high standard, but you treat them with respect. We don't ever yell at people, and so again, even though I'm no longer part of Pinpoint Asia, I'm aware of the culture, and I also know that we instill Pinpoint Asia instills a value of helping people to all the recruiters. So yeah, I mean, I can definitely say most people, if not all the people that work at Pinpoint Asia, at least have the baseline, right, of the standards and the integrity to add real value and trying to help people.
Well, thank you for those kind words, madam. I'm blushing, as you can see. There you go, the
Yeah.
5 tips. So number 1 is using AI to help with one's
Yes.
job search. Number 2 is effective communication skills. Number 3 is good preparation for interviews has to be top
Right.
notch, right? And then
Resume and interview. Yes.
yes, and then number 4 was networking. And then finally, number 5 is knowing good recruiters, right? Those are the 5 tips. Did I miss anything or was that accurate?
Yeah. Yeah. That sounds great. Yeah. That sounds great. And um, yeah. I mean, again, what I find is that there are so many people who have worked so hard, right, to develop their career, work tirelessly, with make sacrifices with overtime and all these different things, only to find that when they are looking for a job, they're disadvantaged, not because of their core skills, right, what they know, what they have achieved and experienced, but because they do not know how to perform these job search activities, right? Which should not be the case. And so again, as a job search coach or career coach, where I come in is I come in to bridge that gap, bridge that missing piece so that people can find really the most optimal, most lucrative, best offer that they deserve based on everything that they have done by optimizing the job search process. And that's where I add value.
That's fantastic, Matt. Please give our audience one more time your handout. Where should they find you? What's your website? How can the people reach out to you to find out more?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn. I post content almost every day. So maybe we can leave a link, maybe in the description, for my personal LinkedIn profile and also my YouTube channel. Again, as I said, I have a number of videos there. I have been a little bit more inactive in the recent months just because of other projects that I was working on. But I will be more active in 2025. So please, follow me on LinkedIn and also YouTube. That'll be great.
Thank you very much, Matt. We appreciate the insight and looking forward to having you on again. And maybe next time we can talk about a particular session and how one candidate can go about answering questions during a mock interview.
Yes, sir. Anytime. You call me, I'll be there.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vince. Take
Thank you.
care.